Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of Prepared, Aware, and Ready to Buy. My name is James Murphy. I'm with Advisors Mortgage Group. I'm a 20-year vet in the industry. Going to give you some tips and tricks on how to get yourself ready to buy in this current market, along with the one and only Laurie.
Hi,
Take it.
everyone. My name is Laurie Savino. I'm a real estate agent with Corcoran in both New York and New Jersey. I've been a real estate agent for over 8 years. I have sold over $40 million in properties, and I'm so excited that you're here to learn with James and I. Take it away, James.
Thank you so much, Laurie. All right, we are excited to get into some of this great information. We're going to start with some basic information as far as what you need to do to get yourself in a position to start considering buying your first home, if not an investment property. I'll also pass it off over to Laurie, who's going to talk a little bit about the industry happenings and some big information that you need to know about this NAR lawsuit. Before we get to that part, let's start getting you guys prepared and ready to go. All right, see my screen here, prepared, aware, and ready to buy. Let's get into it. First thing we're going to talk about today is the credit. It's the credit score. It's the foundation of your approval. It's basically what we're going to use as a lender to qualify the risk of the scenario or the purchase transaction. And when we talk about credit, we're going to talk about something that's a little bit more than just a credit score. It's the whole big picture. And what we're looking at are the trade lines involved here. How many do you have? What type of trade lines that you have? And trade lines are those accounts or credit cards, whether they are installment loans, student loans, auto loans, credit cards, or mortgages. Then we're going to look at the utilization. When we're looking at utilization of a credit, we want to focus on what percentage of the available limit that you are accessing. So how much are you borrowing that you're allowed to borrow? The lower that percentage, the better your score is going to be. So a little tip here, if you want to have a great credit score, keep those balances under 10% of your available credit limit. Next, we're going to look at the history. What kind of history do you have with your credit? How long have you had trade lines? What kind of trade lines have you had for that amount of time? Whether they are store cards, bigger credit cards, if not auto loans or more. And then we're going to look at the infamous derogatories. The derogatories are those collections, those judgments, those real heavy anchors that are going to drag down your score. But it's not just about the actual balance or the payment. It's really what's the story behind it. What happened that led that judgment or collection taking place and being locked into your credit report. So there's a whole lot of details there that we get into. These are things that you want to be aware of. So one tip that we talk about is we're going to ask that you do this, and I'm going to talk about what you shouldn't do next, but do this. First off, you want to examine your credit report personally. What you're going to look at is going to be a consumer FICO score, so don't be surprised if the score that you see is higher than the score that your lender sees. Everything has to do with risk when we get into this whole process, and the risk of you as a consumer checking your score is minimal to zero, and the risk of a lender could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the way I like to tell my buyers is know before you show. Know what's going on with your credit report before I see it, or let's talk about it. And if there are some issues going on, we can take care of those, and we'll walk through that shortly. But remember, credit is a balancing act, right? So you can have derogatory accounts, you can have late payments and other negative impacts, as long as you have way more, and we always say a magic number of three, at least three more credit trade lines that are in all positive, good shape. If you do have these derogatory accounts, we can help you remove those from your credit report. We will help you find a way to get the letter of deletion. Now, a letter of deletion is different than a letter of an account summary or a balance. So it's important that we have that specific letter, and we'll walk through that process if and when you are in that position. And as I mentioned, the balances, we want to keep those under 10% if possible. If we do have to get rid of derogatory accounts, that may involve you as a consumer reaching out to that creditor and trying to explain why the situation occurred. And I always say it's not going to be easy. So remember these two words: polite persistence is the key. You want to be polite and you want to be persistent. If one says no, call back and speak with somebody else, but always be polite because they take notes. And Lori, funny story, my sister used to work at a credit collection agency, and she would see the notes that everybody would put, and it would always be, she always tell me funny stories. It would always be like a Thanksgiving dinner story or we're all together as family, she'd have jokes. So remember, they do see it, they write it down, and
Mm.
evidently talk about it too. So keep that in mind when you're talking. What you don't want to do outside of yelling and cursing off that person on the other line is you don't want to establish new trade lines. New trade lines are going to be those credit cards, those offers when you go to the store. Lori, how many times have you been to the store and they said, "Would you like to save 10%? Just open up a brand new credit card," right? We want to make sure that you don't fall victim to that trap because the brand new trade line is what we call a unseasoned trade line.
Mm.
Seasoning takes place, as I mentioned down below. Seasoning takes place after 6 months. So you want to open that account well before you're thinking about buying a new home. You do not want to close out old trade lines. Remember the balancing act that I mentioned. A balancing act between good and bad is also a balancing act between old and new. So the older the trade line, the better it is. If you have an old trade line that you don't want anymore and it's not charging you an annual fee, just don't use it. But I wouldn't cancel it out and don't close it out. That's going to hurt you. Overusage, as I discussed, the utilization ratio is important. It's also a big impact on the actual credit score. So we're going to look at that and we're going to guide you along the way. If you need to pay down some debt to qualify and raise that credit score, we'll advise you to do so. And then we've got the ability through some software to update the credit report, do what's called a rapid rescore. We can do that within a week or time or so. So miss payments, obviously. You do not want to miss payments and ruin the credit before we go into this transaction. So be mindful of that. And do not forget, seasoned credit is good credit. As I said, don't close out old credit. Next thing we're going to talk about are your assets. We want to get your assets in line and we want to make sure that you're aware of what we're going to be looking at. Now, when we look at assets, assets are liquid money used and unused throughout this transaction. Okay, so the unused money is referred to as reserves. Reserves are important, especially if the underwriter's on the fence of approving or not approving that scenario. They're going to look at what compensating factors are available. And reserves are a compensating factor. So when we look at liquid assets that's being used for the transaction, what we're going to be looking through are your bank statements. We're going to be looking at investments, retirement accounts, and any gifts that you may be receiving for this purchase. The amount of time frame, Lori, is always 6 months. So I'm sorry, 6 months. Wouldn't that be a lot? 60 days. So we just like to scare our audience a little bit here, get them on their toes, thinking about 6 months time frame. It's really just 60 days. So now 60 days doesn't seem that bad.
Mhm.
Um, that being said, we do not want to see any cash being used for the transaction. Cash is not seasoned money, so it might be your money, but if it's under the mattress in a box somewhere that's not in a financial institution like a bank, it's not going to be acceptable to be used for the transaction. Now, we're going to get into that job, the employment. What kind of job do you have? Do you have a job? I sure hope you have a job before you're thinking about buying a house. And with that job, what is important? What we're going to look at as a lender is we're going to look at the stability of that job. What is how long have you been there? Minimum is 2 years is what we're going to be looking at. So we want to see that you've been employed, that you're stable, and that you're locked in somewhere pretty comfortable for at least 2 years. We're also going to be sending that employer a verification of employment. So VOE goes out to them, and what that VOE entails is the last 2 years plus year to date of basically what you've been paid, how long you've worked there, and most importantly, your likelihood to continue, along with any raises you've received along the way and some other information. We're also going to look at the location. Does it make sense? Are you buying a primary residence 100 miles away from where you work? Probably not likely that that's going to be acceptable through underwriting. So they're going to look at how far and does that make sense. You may work from home, which is completely acceptable, especially nowadays. Salary versus hourly paid. I love this, Lori. I get this all the time. And most of the time, buyers don't even realize that they're not salary and that they are hourly. I often ask, are you an hourly paid employee? And they will say, no, no, I'm a salary. And it turns out we get the pay stub and they are hourly paid. Hourly paid is looked at differently. The reason why is because it's a variable income, right? Your income, what you're going to make each week, it varies based on how many hours you work throughout that week. So the stability factor isn't as strong when we look at an hourly paid. unless you've got the history. And that's why we do the VOE. And that's why we'll look at how many hours you've worked, what's the consistency, and the likelihood that those hours will continue. The overtime, bonus, income, commissions, all that stuff is looked at as well. And that's looked at through averages. So what is the average over the last 2 years? And what does the VOE say? Um, that's what I want to get into for the most part. And what I want to talk about is being ready is an ongoing process. So we want to make sure that you're managing that credit, that you're being mindful of your money. Where is the money? How much, how much funds do you have? And then understand the importance of the employment. Um, Before I get into tuning into the next show, we're going to switch this back over to Laurie, who's going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry right now, especially for you home buyers.
Great.
Hmm.
So, James, question for you. When someone wants to start working with you, what's the first thing they need to do? Where do you tell them to go?
So the first thing I would do is we would have a conversation. If they would like to go online, do have a website. I have a website with an application link. You can start an application right online. It's super easy. What I like to do at first is kind of have a conversation so we can discuss. So you can always call me on my cell phone. I like to give out my personal cell phone. That way you always have an opportunity to reach me. To my wife's dismay, this thing is always on me. So if I don't answer, I always say it's only because I can't answer. But I'll always get back to you. But the cell phone is probably the quickest way to reach me, if not a text or an email. Be careful with the emails though, because I get a lot of those. Sometimes you get stuck in the clutter. But the text is the best. The phone call is the best, if not the website.
Great. One of the reasons I love working with James is he'll have a conversation with you first. I find that a lot of mortgage brokers say, just go to my app. But you have to put a lot of financial information, and sometimes they're not comfortable because they haven't spoken to the other person. So when I work with James, it's great because he'll have that conversation. They'll have a sense of, calmness and say, okay, I trust this person. I can give them all my information. So thanks, James. All right. So if you want to help,
Well, thank you. And
unshare.
we're going to stop sharing the screen now.
Yes.
Should be good to go.
I just need if you give me permission to share, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Or you could just switch me back to host. There you
That was the easier way for me, so I just
go.
did that. Should be good.
Okay, great. And James, that was such great information. Thank you so much. I think everyone would really love that and be able to kind of move forward with us working. And what I'm going to talk about is, well, the awareness of this and what's going on with the NAR lawsuit. We're also going to be talking about the home buyer's experience. I have this great document. So if you decide to interview me as your agent, I'm going to send you this document and we're going to go over that as well. And a little bit of just like your house hunting, kind of tips and tricks so that you know what to do when you're looking at a house because it can become overwhelming if you're looking at a lot of houses in one day. At the end of the day, you might say, what did I see? So we'll go over that. So what is my exclusive home buying experience? Well, this is a document that you're going to get. The first part has 7 sections. And what that says is all the things that I bring into the table. What am I doing as your real estate agent? This is going to go through because a lot of people say that we just open doors. But you'll notice there's going to be over 80 things that we do in terms of the transaction. And you want to make sure that you interview your agent. So if you interview me, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this exclusive home buying experience, what we're going to do from the beginning of the transaction when we first meet all the way to that closing days when you get the keys. So it's really important. And also we're going to talk about a partnership contract and what does that mean? So if I'm going to give you over 80 things, I'm only asking you guys for about 4 or 5. And what do those things entail is things like, it's really difficult when I have to set up all the appointments, because you have to realize you have sellers who are there who are getting out of the house. You have agents who are coming. You have my schedule, have your schedule. And it's something that if you really can't make it, then of course things happen. But try to, if you need to cancel, cancel like the night before so that we can tell everyone and they can go on with their day. And you can't imagine how many times that I'm on my way to a showing and someone just cancels. So you want to make sure that you don't do that. The other is like exclusivity. If we work together, that you work exclusively with me, because I'm going to work hard for you. And so it's a sort of a little bit of a partnership, and it's a great document that we will go over. Okay, now you've heard all about the NAR lawsuit, I'm sure. What's going on? Everyone is confused. So I have a couple of questions and answers here to help you along that journey. So the first thing is, how does the system work now and how is it changing? So prior to August 17th, primarily, I would say 95% of the time, the seller would pay the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. Well, that's changing now. What's going to happen is a seller can choose not to pay a buyer's agent. So in terms of when a real estate agent meets with a seller, they'll determine that. And then what happens is with that, this is two main changes happening now. So first, when I have something called a multiple listing service. So if I'm going to look for a house or a property for you, that's where I go to see everything. Typically before it would tell me what my buyer's compensation is. So now they have taken that away. And why did they do that? Well, because of the lawsuit, they thought that the transparency of it was that maybe some agents were only showing houses that were having a larger compensation. And I have to tell you that that's something that was really not true. I can tell you with myself, I've never looked at the compensation before I gave someone, a listing and showed them the houses. But they wanted to make sure that everything was fair. So now there is no compensation listed on the MLS. There's other ways that they can kind of show that. But this is the first two things that are changing. Okay. I'm planning to buy a home soon. Do I need to use a real estate agent? No, you do not. But in order to see a home, you're going to have to sign an agreement with an agent. You can sign one that is an exclusive or a non-exclusive. And a lot of these documents, there's a couple that are out there, and you might say, well, I don't want to sign with someone for 6 months. You don't have to. So if you're interviewing an agent, you can say to them, I would like to work with you for a month, a week, or just that particular house. And in that, you will have to talk about compensation, because if the seller is now not paying the buyer's agent, then the buyer will have to pay for that compensation. And I know that's something that can be really difficult for some people. So when you work with me, we're going to look at different ways that can happen. One thing is called the seller's concession. We can put in the offer and say, you would like to have a seller's concession to pay your agent. And that can vary between 2.5%, or 3%, whatever you decide that you want to work with that agent and whatever that agent accepts. There even are some agents who are doing transaction fees. So that's why you really want to look at your budget, work with an agent that is a very good negotiator. I am actually a certified negotiator, so that's what you want. You want someone that's going to be on your side to help you get the best deal. Because when you work with me as your buyer's agent, I'm going to be able to get you that deal, and I'm going to hopefully try to get that paid as a seller's concession so that you don't have to come out of pocket. Another thing is maybe it is shared. Maybe the seller will give you a certain percentage for me, and then you will pay a certain percentage. So it is completely negotiable. It has always been negotiable commission. So that's something that's really important. And that's what you want to find out. What is your agent bringing to the table? You want someone who's experienced. You want someone who is a certified negotiator. Very, very important, who knows that. Okay. Now, here is a couple of the details when you're looking at a house. But always tell someone that we go through the house first. If they like it after that, take a video, because I promise you're going to forget those little nuances that maybe you saw with your eye, but then totally forgot after I show you 4 or 5 houses. And when you're looking at listings, really look at it, because if you want a 2-bedroom, let's say a 2-bathroom, look for ones that have 2 bathrooms. If that is your non-negotiable, right? If your curb appeal, if you want something that's beautiful in the front, and you're looking at the pictures and you're like, well, I'm not too sure, then don't look at that house. really look for what you're going to love, and that will really help you in your search, and sort of not waste time in the beginning when you're kind of looking at things and not finding what you like, because the pictures are unfortunately a little deceiving sometimes. So you want to look at that. You want to, like, do you need parking? How many bedrooms do you want? How many bathrooms do you want? Something that's renovated? Are you willing to do work? These are all the things that are really important, and also to tell me, and this way that I can help you along with your search. Okay, so thank you so much. You can take your camera out, and that QR code will go to my website. And it is literally like a mini Zillow. There are properties in New York and New Jersey that you can look for, sign up. I'm like so happy to help you. Thank you so much for being here. On the bottom, you'll see all James's information, and we look forward to working with you. James?
Absolutely, Lori, that was fantastic, and just to send you some kudos. I know you don't want to hear it too much, but one of the benefits of working with you, Lori, is really your hands-on, your attention, your skill set of the negotiation process, and obviously the experience, the amount of transactions and families you've helped. I believe both of us that it adds a whole lot of strength to the whole process, and I truly love working with you. And I know any client we've ever worked together with has said the same thing. So thank you for letting for me be a part of this process. I'm so excited to keep these shows going with you, and I look forward to our next episode, ladies and gentlemen. The next episode will be out. When are we doing these? Weekly?
Yeah, I think so. I think we will.
Weekly. It looks sounds like. We'll
We'll try.
more than
We'll
we're not going to tire us too, but we'll probably be there. But you'll be seeing the next episode coming out shortly. Prepared, aware, and ready to buy. James Murphy and Laurie Savino. We'll see you on the next show.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.